The moment my brother pulled my wig off in front of everyone at my wedding, the entire room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the music. My mother looked at me, and instead of defending me, she laughed. She actually smiled and said, "Maybe now the groom will finally see what he's really marrying. A real woman, not a bald ghost." What they didn't know was that beneath that wig was a battle I had fought every single day for months. A battle nobody wanted to talk about. A battle that had changed my life forever. They thought exposing my secret would destroy me. They thought humiliation would make me run away. But they forgot one thing. I had already survived the hardest fight of my life. And that day, at my own wedding, I was about to show them exactly who I was. My name is Emily Carter, and I was 28 years old when the day I had dreamed about my entire life turned into the moment I would never forget. Growing up, I always imagined my wedding day would be perfect. I pictured walking down the aisle feeling beautiful, confident, and surrounded by people who loved me. I never imagined that the people standing closest to me would be the ones who would try to break me in front of everyone. But before I tell you what happened at my wedding, you need to understand something important. The woman everyone saw that day had already fought a battle most people never knew about. 6 months before my wedding, I was diagnosed with cancer. Suddenly, my life became hospital rooms, endless appointments, and conversations about survival instead of wedding plans. The hardest part was not only fighting the illness itself. It was watching my reflection change day by day. My hair, something I had always taken for granted, began falling out during treatment. Every morning, I would wake up and find more strands on my pillow. Eventually, I stopped recognizing the person staring back at me in the mirror. The wig was not a disguise. It was not something I was ashamed of. It was a small piece of normal life that I held onto during a time when everything else felt like it was falling apart. My fiancé, Daniel, knew everything. He had been beside me through every appointment, every difficult night, and every moment when I was afraid I would not make it to our wedding day. He always told me the same thing: "Emily, I don't love your hair. I love you." But my family saw things differently. My older brother Jason had always enjoyed making me feel smaller. Ever since we were children, he was the one everyone praised while I was expected to quietly accept being overlooked. My mother always called him the strong one, while I was treated like the emotional, fragile child. So when I arrived at my wedding wearing my wig and the dress I had carefully chosen, I should have felt like the luckiest woman alive. Instead, I noticed the looks. The whispers. The way Jason kept watching me with a strange smile. At the time, I had no idea he was waiting for the perfect moment to turn my happiest day into his cruelest joke. And that moment came during the reception, in front of everyone I loved. The music was still playing when Jason walked toward me. At first, I thought he wanted to say something kind. Maybe a brotherly message. Maybe a joke that would actually make me smile. I was wrong. He stopped behind me, reached toward my hair, and before I could even understand what was happening, he grabbed my wig and pulled. For a second, I didn't even feel embarrassed. I was just shocked. The room went completely silent. The laughter, the conversations, the clinking glasses, everything disappeared. I stood there frozen, feeling the cold air touch my scalp as everyone stared at me. My first instinct was to cover my head. Not because I was ashamed of myself, but because I suddenly felt like the most vulnerable parts of my life had been exposed without my permission. I looked around the room hoping someone would say something. Anyone. But the person I expected to protect me the most was the one who hurt me even more. My mother looked at me and laughed. She actually laughed. Then she shook her head and said, "Well, I guess now Daniel can finally see the truth. He deserves a real woman, not a bald ghost." Those words hurt more than Jason pulling my wig. Because a stranger being cruel is painful, but cruelty from your own family reaches somewhere deeper. I looked at Daniel, expecting fear or disappointment in his eyes. But instead, I saw something completely different. I saw anger. Not anger at me. Anger at them. He immediately stepped forward and picked up my wig from the floor. He didn't look away. He didn't act embarrassed. He gently handed it back to me and said, "Emily, you are the same woman I walked here to marry." Those words broke something inside me. For years, I had listened to my family make me feel like I was less than everyone else. Like my struggles made me weak. Like my illness made me someone to hide. But standing there in my wedding dress, Surrounded by people who had witnessed their cruelty, I realized something. The problem was never my hair. The problem was never my illness. The problem was the people who thought my pain gave them permission to humiliate me. For years, I had learned to stay quiet whenever my family embarrassed me. I had convinced myself that avoiding conflict was easier than fighting people who never wanted to understand me. But standing there at my wedding, with hundreds of eyes watching and my mother's cruel words still echoing in my mind, something inside me changed. I was tired of hiding. I took a deep breath, held my head up, and looked at everyone in that room. Then I said, "There is something you all need to know." The room became quiet again. I told them the truth. I told them that I had been fighting cancer for months. I told them about the hospital visits, the treatments, the nights I cried because I was terrified of what would happen next. I told them about the mornings when I looked in the mirror and wondered if I would ever recognize myself again. And then I explained something my family never understood. The wig was never about pretending. It was never about lying. It was about giving myself one day where I felt like the old Emily again. It was about walking toward the person I loved without feeling like cancer had taken every piece of my identity away from me. I looked at my mother and my brother and said, "You didn't expose a secret. You exposed a battle I survived." Nobody laughed this time. Nobody smiled. Because suddenly, what they thought was a joke became something completely different. Daniel stepped beside me and took my hand in front of everyone. He told the room that he knew about my cancer from the beginning and that he had never once seen me as anything less than beautiful. He said, "The woman standing beside me today is the strongest person I know." For the first time that night, I stopped feeling embarrassed. I stopped feeling like I needed to apologize for what my body had been through. My brother thought removing my wig would make me feel powerless. My mother thought her words would destroy my confidence. But they forgot something important. I had already faced something much harder than their cruelty. I had survived. And I was still standing. After I finally told the truth, the entire atmosphere in the room changed. People who had been looking at me with confusion suddenly looked at my family differently. The whispers that had once been about me became about Jason and my mother. I watched as relatives who had stayed silent for years started stepping away from them. Some guests approached me with tears in their eyes, apologizing for not understanding what I had been carrying. One of my childhood friends hugged me and said, "Emily, I had no idea you were going through all of this. I'm so sorry you had to face it alone." Those words meant more than she realized. Because for so long, I had felt like I was fighting two battles at once. One against cancer, and another against the people who were supposed to love me. Jason tried to defend himself. He said he was only joking and that everyone was being too sensitive. But nobody believed him anymore. There is a difference between a joke and cruelty. A joke makes people laugh together. Cruelty makes one person feel small while everyone else watches. My mother tried to fix the damage too, but not because she suddenly understood my pain. She was worried about how people saw her. She pulled me aside and whispered that I had embarrassed the family by making such a big scene. That was the moment I realized something painful. She was not sorry for hurting me. She was sorry that other people finally saw who she really was. For years, I had waited for an apology. I had hoped that one day my family would recognize how much their words and actions had affected me. But standing there, I understood that I could not keep waiting for people to become the family I needed. So I made a choice. I stopped seeking their approval. I stopped trying to prove that I was worthy of love. Because I finally understood something my cancer journey had taught me. My value was never decided by my appearance, my struggles, or my family's opinion. I already knew who I was. And nobody could take that away from me again. Walking away from my family was not easy. People often think the hardest part of being hurt is the moment it happens. But sometimes, the hardest part comes afterward, when you have to accept that the people you hoped would change may never become the people you needed them to be. After my wedding, I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped wondering if one day my mother would finally look at me and say she was proud. I stopped waiting for Jason to treat me like a sister instead of someone he could use as the target of his jokes. For the first time in my life, I focused on healing. Not just healing from cancer, but healing from years of believing I was not enough. Daniel stood beside me through everything. He reminded me every day that I was more than my appearance, more than my scars, and more than the difficult moments I had survived. Slowly, I started seeing myself the way he saw me. strong, beautiful, worth loving. My hair eventually began growing back, but something inside me had already changed. I realized my confidence was never sitting on my head. It was never in a wig, a hairstyle, or the way other people viewed me. It was inside me all along. Months after the wedding, I donated my old wigs to a cancer support organization. I remember holding that box before sending it away and feeling emotional. That wig had been with me during some of the darkest moments of my life. But it also reminded me of something important. I was not the woman who lost her hair. I was the woman who survived. Today, when I look back at that wedding day, I no longer remember the embarrassment first. I remember the moment I finally found my voice. My brother tried to take away my confidence. My mother tried to make me feel broken. But instead, they showed me something I needed to learn. Real family does not shame you for your struggles. Real love does not disappear when life gets difficult. And sometimes, the strongest version of yourself is created when you finally stop begging people to see your worth and start believing it yourself.